Hey guys, welcome to week 3 of our garden tours here at Reach and Reverie. Are you as excited as I am to see our garden this week? Let's go take a look. There's so much that has grown, there's more that's been added, and let's just see what's different and what's new, but everything is exciting. So here we have our French breakfast radishes, and believe it or not, these are coming up this week. So next week they will not be in the garden. You can see already, where am I looking at? That quite a few of them are pretty big. There are some that started just a little bit later and aren't quite as big, but they're coming out regardless. The little ones are gonna be chicken feed. The big ones are gonna be soup for us or roasted, and the chickens are gonna get all of the greens. So aren't they cute? They're not super big, but this was really going to be a cover crop for us anyway, because we are going to be planting our herb garden in this spot where the French breakfast radishes have been. So these are actually really good when they're young. They're going to be a little bit spicier than if we were to let them get really big, but we love them. We'll cut them up and roast them. They're really good in menudo and pozole, and they also do really good in like something like chicken and dumplings. They add a lot of good heartiness to that soup. Very healthy. Some of them are also really nice and big. Yeah. So they're coming up, and the herbs are going to be going down. Now my purple potted pole beans are also doing pretty good. They aren't very pretty. They had a lot of roly-poly damage early on, so they look a little ragged, but they're growing, and I couldn't be happier. I thought I was gonna lose my whole crop and have to start over with the roly-polies, but you know what? We might get some purple potted pole beans after all. And our little surprise plant right here is also doing really good. Let me know if you think you figured it out. I can't wait to see what he is. I know what he is, but I can't wait for y'all to find out. And my beautiful sunflowers are still doing really good. They don't like some of our hot days that we've had, but a little bit of water and they perk right back up. Mr. Choi is coming back from his winter dormancy where he turned all purple and stressed. He's starting to get a little bit of green again. And I have a nice pot that my boss actually got for me, and that was really sweet. So we're gonna plant something in him. Don't know what yet. But what I still have in the greenhouse, bag of soil, I mostly have herbs. Like this was salvia. I have a couple of small tomatillos, catnip, a lot of yarrow, some chicken forage in the back. I have one cucumber, some cilantro and Mexican mint, and I have 3 really puny jalapenos, and my amazing balsam, peppermint balsam. This is one of my favorite plants so far that I've grown. I just love those serrated leaves, that really pretty red stalk. He's really healthy. He needs to go in the herb garden already. And I have planted out the rest of my Blue Beauty tomatoes right here. I ended up keeping them, and I'm gonna do a really cool experiment this year. These 2 are not gonna be pruned at all, and they actually have some blossoms already. They haven't bloomed yet, but they're starting. And these guys are really healthy, so these are gonna grow up with their tomato cages, and I'm not going to prune them. That way they can kind of shade themselves with their own leaves and keep some of the heat, because it gets really hot here out in West Texas in the Chihuahuan Desert. So we're gonna kind of compare their production versus the tomatoes that I have in the garden, which I'm going to prune very heavily. And you wanna prune tomatoes that are in the garden that are really close together if you live in a really hot area that might be a little humid, because tomatoes need a lot of airflow to stay healthy. So since these are gonna have their own pots, they're gonna not need quite as much airflow because they're gonna be shading themselves. They're not gonna be protecting or shading each other, so they're gonna use more of their foliage as protection for themselves. I am just gonna clean up just the bottom, and then I'm gonna let them bush out. Versus on all of the tomatoes that I have in the garden, I'm gonna be pulling off all of the suckers that grow in the armpits and keep those really pruned. But these, we're just gonna watch and we're gonna compare. Is the production better when you grow them in their own pots or is it better on the trellis in the garden? And then here I have a beautiful husky red cherry tomato that another boss at work gave me. I gifted her a Jarradale pumpkin that I had in the greenhouse, and she turned around and was very sweet and gifted me this cherry tomato, and it's just gorgeous, beautiful, already hardened off, not leggy at all, and I cannot wait to try cherry tomatoes. I didn't actually have any cherry tomatoes in the garden this year, and this just made me so happy. So hopefully he does really well, and he's going to be sitting right next to these other 2 tomatoes. And these tomatoes are about the same age. We have our beefsteak Blue Beauty and the husky red cherry. And this one, even though it is shorter, it is just as healthy and just as hardy and just completely beautiful. So this used to be my carrot bed, and if y'all notice, you don't see any carrots in here anymore. So it was really too hot and too late for me to be starting carrots, and they just weren't thriving. They were kind of puny and not handling our warm spring temperatures. So I just went ahead and pulled them up. I didn't think that they were going to develop healthy carrots. I didn't think that it was going to be a good use of this space, since we are gardening on such a small scale this year with the space that we do have. So I pulled up almost all of the carrots. I do have a couple little ones I left in there just to see if they will grow up under the shade of these plants, but I'm not really sure if they will because I covered them with mulch, so they might not have enough sunlight. But surprise, maybe we will. Maybe we'll get some carrots. But what I did plant in here is I have a teddy bear dwarf sunflower, and he's going to grow up nice and tall, and he's going to be on that back area getting all of the sunshine back there. And then I have 2 amazingly beautiful nasturtiums, because you guys know how much I love nasturtiums. I couldn't resist planting more of these guys. And then right here in the middle, I have another of my Art Combs Ancient Watermelon. And he's doing really good. He had a little bit of a better start than the one I planted in the garden because he had just a little more time to mature in the greenhouse before getting planted out. So he does have a little bit of stress from the heat and transplanting, but overall he's thriving really nicely. And I'm hoping he's going to get huge. He can kind of tumble out of the pot, and the nasturtiums might get a little bit of shade from him in the peak of the summer, and they'll all kind of coexist with each other. That is the hope. My little cucamelon, my sweet cucamelon right here, he has been adjusting to his new home. He does not want to grow at all on this. I've actually had to tie him to the post because he just kept reaching and not wanting to climb at all. So here in a few days, I'm going to attach him again up here, and I'm just going to keep doing that until we get out of the height of the chickens, because believe it or not, no matter where he climbs, I want him to grow on the fence, but if it's within reach of the chickens, they're just going to devour him. So I want to keep him safe on this stalk until he gets long enough to where I feel comfortable putting him on the fence. And once he's attached to the fence, he can go anywhere he wants to go and grow some beautifully sweet, limey, tasty cucamelons for me. And then my amazing Jarradale pumpkin. He is just so happy, and look at this. Those leaves are the size of my hands this week. I do see that a slug sat on him. He has some slimy, shiny slug juice, so I'm probably going to rinse that off and we'll see what happens. I'm hoping we don't get any slug damage, but overall he has a ton of new growth and he's just happy as can be. And it was kind of a whim, me planting him here. I didn't know if he was going to do very well because he's in regular West Texas clay soil. And I know pumpkins like a nice drainage. They don't want to be sitting in their water. So I was a little concerned, but look at how happy he is. He is so big and beautiful. And I'm going to let him do whatever he wants. He can grow all the way out to these steps, grow around there. He can come out this way. Just grow me some beautiful blue pumpkins, Mr. Pumpkin Plant. Hey, look at how hot it is. April 18th, 85. All week we're expecting to be around 85. The temperatures at night look like they're going to be 55. We did get a cold snap this week after we had a windstorm And so like you can see we have a ton of foliage falling from the trees just everywhere. All of this green stuff we did not give the chickens. It has fallen from the trees from how windy we've been. We did have a little bit of damage on our plants from the wind, and then right after that windstorm we had temperatures down to 35 degrees for 2 nights in a row. So on this cucamelon here, he lost all of the leaves in this area, and he's gonna live, but he's struggling a little bit. You can see he has some damage from that cold. So we'll see what happens. I'm hoping this was pollinated, but I don't know yet. It might be too early. We don't have really any other cucamelons flowering, so don't know what's gonna happen there. Hey girls. I'm gonna give them this radish that I pulled up. Here we go. They love them. Love, love, love the radishes. So, step into my garden, guys. I do still have the sheets in case we get another freeze. I can cover up my plants. So we have our morning glories, and these I thought were gonna be damaged by the cold. They were really, really curly after that frost, or almost frost. But they're doing good. They look really nice. My cucamelon here also had some damage. The end of this is completely just crumbled off. So he'll give us some more shoots off at the bottom. You can see he already has a second shoot coming up. So this one, we'll see what happens. He does have a couple fruit developing, or blossoms developing. So we'll get some production out of him, but I do really want this to grow up and just be a nice carpet of foliage on this dead, almost dead stump. He still is trying to grow another pecan tree out of that stump. The parsley is actually very happy that we got cold this week. Look at that. After the cold snap, he's greened right back up. Parsley do not like hot weather. He's still bolting. He's developing some flowers, but I thought we were going to lose him once we started getting hot, and all he needed was another night, 2 nights of 35 degrees, and he just shot that green color back out. Very happy for that cold that Mr. Parsley is. So my garden bed right here, my marigolds have done really well. I was worried about them when I planted them. They had a lot of transplant shock, but they're really happy, nice and green. I have a corn growing right there. I didn't remember that I planted it so close to the edge when I planted my marigold here, and it germinated right under, so they might compete a little bit. I'm just gonna let that play out. In total, out of the 12 corn plants that I've planted, I've counted 11 that have germinated. So we're still waiting on one right here. But overall, the corn is coming up. I am gonna support these as soon as they get just a little bit taller, because corn, it has kind of shallow roots, and we get a lot of wind out here. So even though this is a dwarf variety, I think I'm gonna put some stakes and some string across, and I'm gonna let them have something to lean on if it gets really windy, because it is not uncommon for us to get like 35, 45 degrees or 40 degrees mile-an-hour winds out here, where just it's very, very windy. So this is my Black Beauty zucchini right next to the corn, and he is putting off a lot of growth this week. Same with my dark green zucchini, which does have a little bit of cold damage on one of those leaves, or that might be wind damage actually. But they're doing good. I think they're gonna make it. He has a little bit of sun stress too, because I didn't harden these two off. I was really excited to fill this hole, and I didn't harden them off, and they're actually doing pretty good still. My marigold here, I'm so happy with, right next to my zucchini. It has a flower bed right there. So maybe we'll be seeing some marigolds pretty soon. I didn't think marigolds would flower until they were about 60 to 70 days old, and that kind of fits around here because these have to be about 8 or 9 weeks old now, so we should be flowering soon. And my other 2 marigolds are also doing really well. And my ground cherries are getting big. And it looks like they might have some buds starting in the middle, but you just really can't see them very well because this is a small plant. If they are budding, I might pull the buds off because these guys are going to be extremely productive. They can lose a few flower buds and still give us a lot of ground cherries. I'm much more concerned with making sure that these plants develop nice and well, and pulling off those flower buds is just going to give them more energy to produce a beautiful plant. See, the sparrow's damage wasn't very much in the grand scheme of things. He's still thriving, even though you see they took a couple bites out of him. My other ground cherry right next door is also very green and very big and absolutely happy living life in this garden bed. And surprisingly, my shallots are also doing really good. These guys were struggling the whole time I had them in the greenhouse. But now that they're out and they have room to spread their roots and they have a lot of friends next to them, they're doing really good. Getting nice and green, and they're actually more sturdy now with the wind and the sunshine than they were in that greenhouse, which is very good. And then I have my two blue beauty tomatoes and this other Cracker Jack marigold, and all of these guys are pretty healthy. They didn't have as much protection when it got really cold. I put plastic Tupperware containers over them instead of putting a sheet over them, and so they did get just a little bit more damage, but they are still throwing off flowers and they have new growth and they're beautiful green. They don't have that stressed purple leaves that some of the other tomato plants might have, so I'm very pleased with these guys. Something new this week, I actually pulled these out of my greenhouse. These two are my Black King Pansy. So a pansy is an edible flower. They do like the cold weather. This is a good flower to plant in the fall or early spring, and I went ahead and planted it at normal springtime. And we're just gonna see how far we can take these. This area of the garden gets a lot of shade after noon, so it's only gonna have morning sun. So I'm hoping that we can take these pretty far, but the flowers are black and beautiful, and I can't wait to see how those look and how they taste, because pansy flowers go great in a salad. And just look at those leaves, aren't they cute? Little rounded leaves. My fennel is getting very big, getting nice and thick, and very good at supporting itself. I'm so happy with this fennel. It's just very like whimsical and feathery and light and nice and green. Love it. This one's also new. This is my California poppy, and I know California poppies, I've heard, are really not something that you want to transplant. It's something that you would much rather direct sow. And I went ahead and transplanted this one, and it's doing really good. I think it's actually grown exponentially since I put it into a bigger pot. It wasn't a solo cup, and I think it kind of reached as big as it would get in a solo cup. And upgrading it to this just gave it a little more room to grow, and it's just beautiful. I wonder what color these flowers are going to be on this poppy plant. My zinnia looks about the same as it did last week, and I ended up not planting friends for it. I think I'm going to plant new zinnias in their own pots, just because I think that I'm going to get a taller, bigger plant with bigger blooms if he gets the space to himself. So I have plenty of other pots lying around that I think I'm just going to let him have his own space. My sweet peas are competing. They keep grabbing onto each other. I think I'm going to need to give them a better trellis to climb. I have some kind of volunteer tree that's trying to sprout here. I keep cutting him down and he keeps coming back. He is a resilient little tree sprout. I didn't show y'all my tomatillos in this bed, but check them out. They are big and beautiful. They do have some wind damage and some sun damage and some cold damage, but check out the blossoms on this thing. I've already picked off their first round of blossoms, and I am just gonna let it go now because they're acting already really prolific with blossoms. Each little shoot has like a ton of them. So hopefully we'll get a lot of tomatillos. I'm hoping these will pollinate. I really want to get my flowers going so that we can bring more pollinators into the area. But worst case scenario, I don't know if you can hand pollinate tomatillos, but I can hand pollinate like my cucamelons or my tomatoes or other things. So these plants are easily my favorite right now. I just love my tomatillos. This one is struggling the most. He lost all of the big leaves on this side from the wind, and he lost another couple to the cold, but he's still a really healthy plant and I love him. So he's gonna do good things. We just need to make sure we don't get any more cold spells this late in the game. We should be past our last frost date at this point. I'm hoping we are. I'm gonna prepare for if we're not, but I'm hoping we're past that last frost date. So over here we have our squashes and our melons. I have my little cantaloupe melon over here, and he has a nice new leaf this week. He's kind of little. I really want him to catch up, but if he doesn't, as long as he gives us a flower, I will be happy. And my butternut squash this week, I have these two butternuts. They are doing so well. I actually have the beginnings of a flower right there. And you can see on these plants, they already have their little graspers and several new leaves starting to form. So I'm expecting these guys to start trying to climb here in another couple weeks. And as soon as they flower, I know from what I've heard, they're gonna spit out some male flowers first and then some female flowers. So I'm not gonna pull off any flowers off these guys because I just don't want to pull off the wrong ones. There's that bite mark. He's probably always gonna have that, but it's cute. He lived to tell the tale. I have my two acorn squashes, and these guys are doing really good. I think it's interesting how once the leaves have matured, they started pointing and they just look different. The two varieties are butternut and our acorn squash. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. And then Mr. Other Jarradale pumpkin is getting so big. I think these leaves are even bigger than the plant that I had up in the front. He has some damage, but he's gonna survive. He's a really healthy guy. Mr. Okra over here is actually getting bigger this week. Let me take off his deal so you can see him. He is getting bigger, you guys. Look at him. And I knew he would. Once it got hot, and it's gonna be hot all week, I knew he was gonna take off. You guys are like, he still looks really little. Or maybe it's your first video watching with us and you're like, it's a little plant. But you guys, he's grown since last week. And he's healthy, and I didn't know if he would make it because he's had a really slow start, but I'm rooting for this little guy. Don't know about you. We're gonna have some gumbo in a couple months. Back to the bigger bed. This is the bed that I was the most excited about going into this gardening season. This is actually the bed that we lost a whole plant to. Everybody got a little bit of damage or a little bit of stress from the wind and the cold, but this bed we did lose a plant. I have my 6 Blue Beauty tomatoes, and these are actually growing a little bit this week. They're just a little bit taller. You can see they're pretty purple-blue stems. A lot of tomatoes have green stems, but these have that blue color to them because wherever the sun hits the tomato, the fruit, it's gonna turn blue because of that. So those are doing really good. Beautiful, healthy leaves. I do have my amazing eggplant over here. And they're hanging in there too. They struggled, I think, the most with the cold. And they also are getting some aphids, but they're gonna do good. My Listata de Gandia eggplant. I have a basil who's getting a little bigger this week. Hello, basil. My 5 jalapeno plants are all growing, and this one, this Hungarian black jalapeno, he is getting real big. He's got a lot of new leaves. And if y'all notice, these sprouts all around, they're everywhere in this garden bed. These are actually radishes that I had planted originally when I made this a radish bed, and they just decided to germinate. So they have a little late start. I've already harvested the radishes from this bed, but I decided I'm just gonna leave them here and I'll let them do their thing, and I will harvest them when they're ready. And I got some extra radishes out of this bed. Thought I was done with radishes, but they are all over the place, little radishes that just started a little later than the rest. So yeah, my brown jalapenos are doing just as good as those black Hungarians. They're looking really nice and healthy and green, and they're not leggy. They're growing really well. I'm a little worried about my albino bell peppers. I don't know if there's some kind of deficiency. It started with the one over here, but all of them are getting some curl to their leaves, little deformed leaves. I don't know if it's a deficiency or not. Or maybe this is normal for the albino bell pepper. I'm gonna have to look into that. Y'all guys had this weird curly leaf thing going on with your peppers. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm gonna let them do their thing. They're still green, they're still growing. So I can only hope that that's a good thing. Right here, I did have a basil plant. Unfortunately, when we had all of that wind, his stem broke. And he did live on for a couple more days, but this morning he decided that he had enough and he shriveled up and he was fed to the chickens. But my other basil plant is doing really well. I do want to plant something else right there. I'm either gonna plant a pollinator or maybe another basil plant. We will see. My nasturtiums are very well. They're nice and full and bushy, and they're growing a lot of new leaves. And they're not expanding out as quick as I thought they would. Like the other nasturtiums I planted in the front are really spreading out and reaching. But that's okay. I kind of like the way these look right now, doing their thing. They're looking good. I want to see what color flowers you have, but I'll be patient. But grow flowers for me. This was that other Art Combs Ancient Watermelon, and he's doing good. He's getting some new leaves. I know you're gonna get really big, Mr. Watermelon. Take your time. We're waiting on ya. I did another Black King Pansy over here, and he's gonna be in a little more shade. I put him in between 2 big pots so that he can get more shade because I know they don't like the hot weather. And I'm just gonna see what does better. A little less sunlight, a little more sunlight. My kale, got some broccoli, which is standing really tall. A couple weeks ago he was leaning all over the place, but he's standing tall again. My rainbow chard. I might have to separate these and plant them in their own pots, because look guys. And this red romaine, and it's doing okay, but I did notice that in the heat of the day when I come home from work at lunch, they're all shriveled up. But they pop back up once it gets shaded, so they're doing all right. My blue butterfly pea has finally emerged, and he's growing. He's gonna get so big, give us some blue food coloring and dye. And then of course, my cucamelons. These are doing better this week. I just need to be patient. Cucamelons take a little longer to get started, and that's okay, because once they do, they're super prolific. All right guys, that was week 3 garden tour. I can't wait to show y'all week 4, but for now, I hope y'all guys are enjoying some happy gardening wherever y'all are. And if not, be prepared. It's going to be a great season. Thank you guys.